Hey gang, just want to show you what's going on with the Chevelle. You've probably seen in the other videos brake work that I've done and changing fluids and that sort of thing that I talked about, fixing the steering column. But after all that, things just don't always go as planned, and we all know this. But going into a blind project and not knowing the history of it, sometimes you find things that give you problems. And that's what happened with this. As I showed you before, I think I may have shown, when I first started on this, I took apart this left rear brake and I showed pieces that all had fallen out, springs and different parts of the brake components. And so I didn't think much of it other than maybe it was put together poorly, or just something simply failed. And so I moved on and I started replacing the shoes and wheel cylinders and everything like that. So I did the other side, the passenger side, put everything together, bled the brakes, things were going smooth, fixed the other items, and then took it for a test drive. Car had plenty of giddy up and go and felt good, but I noticed it was kind of dragging. When I let off the gas, it wanted to slow down all by itself. Usually cars roll pretty well. So I drove it to the end of my street, which is not very long, and brought it back, and I noticed that there was some smoke basically coming from the left rear. So I got my digital laser thermometer, checked temperatures, and the left side was about 230 degrees and the right side was 110 or 120, so something was really wrong. Well, let me show you what's going on. When I pulled everything apart, I found at the top of the shoes here are wearing on both the front and the rear. So that tells me something has to be out of alignment. Things you can't change basically are the axle, because that's a fixed item within the housing, and unless the flange is bent, there's really nothing that tells you something's wrong with that. So I had the wheel on, started the car and let it run, and I was able to see that the wheel was running true, so I know the axle is fine. And then I started looking harder at how this thing is together, and things really started bothering me because it just looks out of alignment. This post here where the shoes ride on looks kind of awkward, and as I looked further, I discovered some things. Now this is just a combination square. You can see I'm making contact, or maybe here, making contact with the backing plate. Go over to this side and I have a gap, and you can look at how it even rides on the shoe. Maybe see that gap is not straight. So then I started looking a little further, and I got out my little steel rule and I measured from here, and I don't know if there's enough light or not, but that measured about 20 from the back of the flange to the wheel cylinder, and this one measured whatever it was, 28. I can't remember the numbers, but the end result is I believe the backing plate is bent. So that's throwing the wheel cylinder out of alignment, and you can kind of see it right now as you look at it. That wheel cylinder is sitting funny. You can see more of the body of it here than over here. So this the backing plate is bent. So the fix for that is, one, you're either trying to find a way to reshape the backing plate while it's on the car, or you pull it off and replace it. And that's what I'm going to do. I don't feel comfortable trying to straighten this thing out and having it maybe close. I'd rather have a correct plate. So to do this, I'm going to end up draining the fluid back out, which I'm going to save because there's nothing wrong with it. I'll save it in a clean container, and then I'm going to have to pull the C-clips, or C-clip because I'm not doing the other side, pull the axle out, take apart all the brake assembly again, and remove the backing plate. So I'm going to get started and try to get this done as quickly as I can. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the cover off, and that was just 12 half-inch head bolts because this is a 12-bolt rear end, and I saved the fluid as I was saying, and now I have to remove this pin up here. Let's see if I can show it to you. It's right here. It's kind of hard to see without some good light. There you can see it, the edge of it anyway. And that pin, what it does is it keeps the axles from moving in towards each other It keeps them separated. And to remove that pin, I have to remove this bolt up here, which is a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to use a 6-point socket because I don't trust a 12-point on something like that. I want to make sure I don't round it off. Okay, so here's the bolt. I removed it, or I'm removing it, and this one actually has a little star washer on it. So set that aside, and I took a magnet and I was able to put it on the end of the rod and get it to pull out. So now I can get a hold of it, hopefully. And that's it. And you can see it's got flat areas and a round area. And the round area in the middle is what actually makes contact with the axle ends. So I set that aside, and then what I'll have to do is get the magnet in there. I'll have to push the axle in towards the center, and then get my magnet up in there and get a hold of it, the C-clip, and pull it out. Okay, so I had to rotate the carrier so that the wider side, I didn't realize there was a wider side here, was facing to the back, because on the other side the springs are closer together, and so there was not enough room to get the C-clip out, and basically there it is, C-clip. So I had to push in on the end of the axle this way. I used my foot and got my magnet on the C-clip and pulled it out. So now I'll be able to pull the axle out of the car. Okay, so as you see, I've already taken all the brake shoes and all the springs and everything out of the way. So I'm just going to pull in the axle. And that's it. Slides right out. Set that aside. Now I can have a better look at what's out of shape here. I know it's hard to see. I guess from my perspective I can see it a lot better that the thing is bent. And now what I'll do is take the wheel cylinder back off, remove these 4 bolts, and also remove the parking brake. And this has these little teeth here. They kind of like fingers, they spread out. And so I'll have to work each one of them in to the hole and push it out. And I also have to remove the end of the assembly here. And that's just nothing more than compressing the spring on the end and sliding it off. It has a slot right there. So I'll get that off, get that out of the way, pull the wheel cylinder, and then pull these 4 bolts, and that'll give me the backing plate. Okay, so there's everything removed. The 4 bolts that hold it to the housing are 9/16. So I pulled those, and I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but I can see that it's bent. And I don't know how it got like that, but unfortunately it's got, there you can see a little more. If you plane across here, you can see where this is deflected. So I'm just going to replace that, and apparently Summit has these, so I'm going to go down to Summit and make sure I get one that has the exact same pattern, and I'll probably have to salvage this bolt mechanism or bracket that holds the ends of the shoes. So it's unfortunate, but it's got to be fixed. Okay, this worked out really well. I went down to Summit. I had gone online to check, and if you can see that or not, there's the part number, which matched up to this car, and almost identical. You know, the function will be the same. This one had an extra piece of metal down here, which is probably some sort of a deflector for dirt or dust or whatever. And I did not have to pull the bolt off because the new one came with a post already mounted. You can see there. And so everything's good. It mounted up just fine. Check the seal. Even though it's crusty looking out here, the seal itself is in good shape for the axle, so I'm not going to mess with that. And now I'm just going to reverse the order and put things back together. So obviously put the axle back in, wheel cylinder, brake shoes, all that sort of thing, and try to get this thing finished up. Well, it's all back together. Covers back on, fluids back in, and I'm really happy because everything lines up here at the backing plate and the axle the way it should be, and everything's nice. Really happy with that. Not something you normally run into, but there is a way to fix it. And now that that's all lined up, the drum lines up really nice, and I'm ready to put this thing back together and go for a test drive. Something different, but thought I'd share it. Thanks for watching.